Hey Blenders, it's Sean here to introduce you to a bonus episode of ReelBlend, a very special interview with director Andrew Dominik, who is talking about his new film, Blonde, which was in limited release and is now coming to Netflix. This is generating a ton of conversation, primarily because of its NC-17 rating and the performance of Ana de Armas as Marilyn Monroe. This is not a true traditional biopic, but instead sort of a fantasy version of the trials and tribulations that Marilyn Monroe probably went through over the course of her illustrious Hollywood career, with some liberties taken, of course. But that's what makes Andrew Dominik's translation of her story and his feature film that much more interesting, I think. We're going to get into a full review of the film on Friday's show, and you're going to want to tune into that because at least one of us disagrees completely with the other two, and that always makes for an interesting conversation. But speaking of interesting conversations, I want to throw it right to our interview with Andrew Dominik speaking about Blonde here on ReelBlend. So I want to start here because I think that for a number of people who probably watch Blonde, they might never have actually seen a full Marilyn Monroe performance. They might have seen clips from Gentlemen Prefer Blondes or maybe even checked out Some Like It Hot. And so I just want to know from your opinion what you thought of her as an actress, what made her interesting as a performer.
Well, I didn't think anything of her as an actress before I read the book. You know what I mean? Like Marilyn Monroe films were not really in my kind of, wheelhouse of kind of cinema, if you know what I mean. I thought she wasn't good, until I actually started watching the films because of the book. And now my opinion is completely the opposite. I think that The Prince and the Showgirl is one of the greatest performances I've ever seen by a woman. That performance is extraordinary. I don't know if you've ever seen the movie. It's not, maybe it's not the greatest film she was ever in, but it's certainly an incredible performance. I mean, obviously her acting changes over her sort of, 3-decade in the movie business. Well, not 3 decades, maybe 2 decades, And it goes from that very bizarro kind of early stuff with Natasha Lytess was her acting coach, where she emphasizes every consonant. I don't know if you've seen Don't Bother to Knock, but it's the most weird way of speaking. And then you get the kind of mid-period kind of cartoonish, sort of dumb blonde sex doll period. And then you get post Strasbourg, where she gets, she goes further towards naturalism, and she's amazing. I mean, she's amazing because it doesn't matter what the movie's about. Whatever's going on with her becomes the main story. You know what I mean? Like if you see a movie like The Misfits or something like that, which is supposed to be like these 3 sort of broken down, shattered men, and she's like this breath of life that's brought into their lives. I mean, that's the idea of it. But when you watch the movie, it's about 3 creepy guys trying to fuck a pilled out divorcee. Like whatever's going on with her is the most compelling thing,
I want to talk about the aspect ratio changes in the film. I thought they were incredible. To me, they gave me a disorienting feeling that we were going through with the character. But going from like the 137 and the 185 and 239 and kind of those shifts, but also you shift from color to black and white as you also shift aspect ratios. Can you talk about the thematics and the narrative choices as to what you wanted to put out with those changes?
Yeah, I mean, basically, I wanted to sort of, harness the collective memory of her, right? So if you've got if you know Marilyn Monroe's life in images, there's so many images in the film that you're going to recognize. And the idea, like if you do a Google search of Marilyn Monroe, you'll see all these images from all over the film. And I guess the idea was to sort of just sort of trap her within the collective memory. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it, it was a little bit nerve-wracking because I thought, maybe it might be a little distracting to mix color and black and white, but I think it works. I like it. I mean, and there's no logic to it. Do you know what I mean? There's no kind of story logic, like flashbacks are black and white, or when she's happy it's color, when she's sad it's black and white. It's nothing like that. It's just purely what image is the scene based on? Is that what aspect ratio is that image in? Because when you look at cinema of the time, right? It's very sort of key light, Technicolor, black and white. It's a very old-fashioned style of photography that looks, it's beautiful. It's like storybook dream photography, and I love it, But when you look at photographs of her, they're very modern. Most of them are made in available light with beautiful large format, Leica lenses and stuff like that. It's a very modern kind of a look. And just because she's photographed, do you know what I mean? There's so much imagery of Marilyn Monroe. And even if you haven't seen, even if you're not conscious of the fact that you've seen these images, Sure. And they're tugging at some memory that's inside you. And I just felt like that was too good to ignore, particularly if you're dealing with a movie that's primarily dealing with the unconscious.
Yeah. The moment we were discussing, Jake, I'm sorry to cut you off, was when Arthur Miller comes out of having recognized her as an actual performer, and then he's confronted with the 7-year itch promo, and it's like a reminder of, oh, that's right. In addition, she is this larger than life character that you can't escape almost. Yeah,
she's going to be big in his life. Do you know what I mean? And he's trying to run away from her, but he's just a helpless little man.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, Andrew, that actually leads perfectly into my next question, because I want to talk about crafting a story around someone in history where the legend of the person is arguably bigger than the reality, and both the case of Jesse James and Marilyn Monroe. So I'm curious, as a storyteller, did you see any similarities between the two experiences making those two movies, in which both of the people are no longer just people? They're almost godlike figures within the realm of pop culture.
Yeah, the difference with Jesse James is everything that happens in Jesse James is factually accurate. Do you know what I mean? Bob Ford killed Jesse James because Dick Little fucked Woodhite's stepmother and tried to kill Wood tried to kill Dick, and Dick killed Bob, and they were frightened of cousin Jesse finding out, and that's why they killed him, right? It's the craziest kind of, shaggy dog story about what happened, But Blonde is not concerned with factual accuracy in the same way. Blonde is basically trying to harness a certain iconography and a certain historical figure to say something about all human beings, about the way all people experience life, particularly the unloved children of the world. You know what I'm saying? Whereas Jesse James is a little bit more beholden to history, I say that would be the difference between the two of them. Do you know what I mean? I guess both of them are concerned with, I like true stories about real people, and I like people who are extraordinary, and a lot of people who are extraordinary are famous,
It makes sense.
Yeah. Andrew, not to have you speak for her, obviously, but I'm curious about the types of conversations that you had with Ana then about her own experiences of being someone who is a celebrity and the amount of attention that she gets.
She wasn't really a celebrity when we started. Do you know what I mean? She's sort of become one in the interim. Ana is not a sense memory girl. Obviously the film is concerned with some of these acting ideas about like harnessing your own trauma, or, she's trying to conjure up a memory of her father in order to help her play a scene in an audition and all that sort of stuff. All those early sort of method ideas, which also have a certain overlap with psychoanalysis. It's a very fertile sort of period, for both like head shrinking and acting, you know what I mean? And they were sort of entwined, and the film's concerned with all of that stuff. But Ana is not, Ana's not recalling some hideous trauma in order to like act. Yeah, she's just using her imagination. I remember having that conversation with her about like, you know, where does it come from? She said, oh, I'm never trying. It's never something from my own life. It's always just trying to put myself in Norma's shoes, you know, pretty much. But having said that, you know, she's primarily kind of an emotional being in a way, Ana, or when you start dealing with her in scenes, it's very much a kind of feeling world that you're in, you know? So yeah, so we didn't really, I mean, obviously life experience comes into it, you know, like when you're trying to explain what a scene is and it's like, you know, when blah, 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 you know, when they're trying to talk you, when your agent's trying to talk you into, you know, doing something for less money, or like, you know, we've all got that because we're in the business. We've all got that sort of commonality,
of course,
of experiences there.
And the overwhelmingness of like a premiere, you know, like the way you capture premieres and the amount of attention that's on her, it's suffocating, you know, and I would assume she has some experience with that.
Well, that's what it feels like. You know what I mean? I mean, most of the time it's like, you know, I don't think anyone enjoys that stuff. You know, or I mean, occasionally you enjoy it, but like it's pretty bizarre. You know,
sure.
The nexus of that kind of attention is just like, you know. Yours
was last night, wasn't it?
Yeah. I mean, I didn't. It wasn't so crazy. I mean, I got there late. I think, you know, they just not a very long carpet at the Man's Chinese.
Sure.
You know, from the edge of Hollywood Boulevard to the front door. Yeah, I don't know what it was. It wasn't crazy, right? No, it wasn't crazy. I mean, Venice is pretty crazy.
Yeah, that could, yes.
Like people fighting and fucking going crazy, you know.
I want to talk to you more about the immersive quality of the camera work, and the score is absolutely incredible. And I was talking to you earlier about the aspect ratios, and I thought that was such an immersive tool, and the black and white and the color. I thought all of that brought me into the world more. I was latched on to the story because of images and the way you played with them. But I remember one time I was watching Jesse James, which is one of my favorite movies of all time. And I remember Deakins talks about using these Deakinizer lenses where it would blur aspects of the frame. And I saw that here as well. You were blurring sections of the frame as well that Chase Urban's doing as well. Can you talk about what you want to get across thematically by doing that? Like what that's supposed to be in terms of our view. And to me, it's a very immersive tool that you used both in Jesse James and here. Was it achieved the same way?
Well, you know, you're trying to write with a camera, you know, and you know, for me, people talk a lot about storytelling when it comes to filmmaking, but what I'm really interested in is the kind of musicality of film, you know, like I would like to make film that can come at you directly, you know, and it operates like a piece of music, that a certain image has kind of a tone or a chord or something that can sort of reach you directly. So you just do whatever seems to feel right to kind of evoke a feeling. Do you know what I mean? And sometimes that stuff can feel a bit self-conscious, you know, when it's like done badly, and when it's done really well, it's amazing.
Andrew, in the copyright pages of Blonde, Joyce Carol Oates specifically says this novel is not a biography, it's not biographical, it's a work of fiction and imagination. So I'm curious, do you see this film as a work of fiction? Like, should people be taking away any kind of fact from this film at all?
Well, I think it's emotionally true. It's all fiction, baby. You know, even a documentary's fiction. You know, this situation we're in right now is fictional. You know, do you know what I'm saying? Like, I mean, the film's about the meaning of Marilyn Monroe. It's not like it's concerned with what does she mean? Why does she continue to exert a hold over the imagination? Do you know what I mean? Or the collective imagination. That's what it's about, you know, because, you know, the woman herself is gone. The image remains, you know, and it kind of does hook into, it hooks into us in a certain way. And why? What does it mean? Yeah, I guess that's what I'm saying. That's what the film's about. It's not about on the 4th of August, this is what happened. You know,
sure.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. And I'm curious if just over the course of your time, not that I'm asking you to name drop anybody, but if it's common to see actors that sort of treat their stardom as a separate entity, or something that's unique from their personality, or is that something that was really tied to Marilyn and the way that she handled the larger than life myth of her?
Well, it's not just her. I mean, I think it's all of us. I think that we all have a self that's for public consumption. You know what I mean? Look, when you fall in love with someone, right, you put your best foot forward, and so do they. And then at a certain point, you have to encounter the real human that's behind all that. Do you know what I mean? And that's usually when the whole thing breaks down. But I think that's the way we all go through life, split in half to a certain extent. Between the kind of unlovable self and the acceptable self that is for consumption. I think in a famous person, that's just more exaggerated.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
Do you know what I mean? Like,
sure.
I mean, there's literally an image and there's literally Norma, and it's the traumatic experience that necessitates that split.
Yeah, and then I think she becomes more comfortable when she's around people who legitimately recognize her as Norma,
Well, we don't know about that, because she constantly seeks out the other people. You know what I mean? I mean, the only person who seems to really actually see her and care about her is Whitey, her makeup artist, but she just runs from the frying pan to the fire, it seems. Right. She moves further and further away from people who can accept her and more towards people who don't. That's what I see happen in the film.
Andrew, this film ended and I have not stopped thinking about it. It is an immersive experience, and it is an incredibly emotional experience. And we were all talking last night after we watched it and kind of just about our thoughts on it and kind of going through the thematics. And then at the end of our conversation, we were talking about the MPA and the rating system and how ridiculous the MPA has been over the years in terms of, like, you could say one F word in a PG-13, but if you say 3, you get an R. It's just a very strange system. But we all said to each other, like, why do we think this got an NC-17? And we all collectively thought it had to be the JFK scene. Is that the scene that you think got the NC-17, or and do you agree with the rating for the film?
I mean, it's hard to say because they're a lockbox, mate. They don't come back and I mean, they give you sort of pointers as to what might be problematic, but yeah, maybe. I mean, I think it's got a lot to do with who's in it. But on the other hand, people do seem to be like sort of, upset by the film or triggered by the film in some way, so maybe it's more effective than I thought.
But when you were filming that scene, did you know? What I'm looking
forward to is reading all the trigger warnings, because I think we've got everything from flashing lights to suicide to rape to, drug use. I mean, everything, right?
Right, yeah. There's something in there for everybody.
Don't have?
I'm not quite sure. I'm not sure.
Andrew, you mentioned about people being upset about who's in that scene, and we were talking about this, and I found it interesting that the film does specifically name Arthur Miller, but it does not name Joe DiMaggio or President Kennedy. Is there a reason that you can name one person and not another? Is it a legal issue? Is it a story issue?
I don't know. I mean, it's something Joyce did in the book. And maybe it was legal. Maybe it was a legal issue at that point. I don't know. I mean, I think Joyce set out to write a 100-page novella, and at the very last line would reveal the name of Marilyn Monroe. So I think she sort of had this idea of not naming anyone, but then it turned into this sprawling, 700-page novel. And then maybe a few of those things survived. I don't know. I mean, obviously, the film's not. And the book are not at all concerned with being fair to any other historical figure. I mean, it's all from her point of view. How does it feel to her? And it's not balanced or fair. We're inside the sort of narcissistic fortress. I mean that not like, everybody, narcissism is synonymous with psychopath these days, but I mean in the psychoanalytic term, where we don't know any more than she does. Do you know what I mean? And we experience it all from how it feels to her, where she is retaining her essential innocence the whole way through, which is not the most realistic way to view the world, but that's the way we do it in this film. You know what I'm saying? Because she's a little orphan child, and the world is doing it to her. She's certainly not accepting any responsibility for herself. Do you know what I mean? That's the way the film functions, you know.
Right. Andrew, who did you get to read the letters from her father?
The actor that plays her father.
Oh, is it really?
Yeah. It's the guy in the photograph. He's
wow.
Yeah.
That's interesting. I was just curious because I was looking for it in the credits.
The father. He is the father. He's actually there. He's actually there. If you look really carefully, you know, when she's looking for him outside the theater.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he's on the left of frame. He appears just a tiny bit out of focus just before the cut.
Wow. Kevin, did you see that?
No. Really?
No.
You'd have to watch the movie a few times to see that.
Oh,
Andrew,
that's heartbreaking. That's heartbreaking.
I have to mention this to you because one of the things that have been struck by when I watch the film is the smile. The smile brings so much light, but also you understand why she's smiling, if she's faking the smile, or she'll go from very sad to smiling, basically from Norma to Marilyn. But the smile to me was almost a character in itself. And I wanted to ask you about, as a filmmaker, capturing that smile, knowing what it would do to us emotionally, whether it be invoke a positive or a negative aspect. But to me, that was a really significant part to her performance.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, she really looks like Marilyn when she smiles.
Yeah.
You know, so I was always getting her to smile, you know what I mean?
Andrew, I have read a lot of interviews, just all three of us, I think, can honestly say that Jesse James is one of our favorite films. And there's something that Brad Pitt says that I thought was fascinating, which is that he doesn't really remember any lines from his movies. Like, people approach him on the street and try to quote a movie and he has no idea what they're talking about. But the one line he does remember that he can quote is from Jesse James. It's about the red hands and the mean face. So I'm curious, like, what does it mean to you that of all the films that man has done, and let's be honest, he's done quite a few, that's the line and the movie that seems to have made the impact? Because just about, it doesn't matter what movie he's doing press for, he brings up Jesse James.
He does. Yeah. Well, it's a great movie.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
And it's also, it was a neglected film. So I think, you know, he probably feels a kind of protectiveness over that movie, because it's not like the world stood up and cheered for Jesse James, you know. But that's probably, I think that's he loves that film, you know. And you always feel protective of your neglected masterpiece.
That's his best movie, in my opinion.
Yeah. Especially when you believe in them so
Totally,
wholeheartedly.
Totally, yeah. I think that's great. I mean, that's beautiful. I didn't even know that.
Yep, it's a true story.
I didn't know that, you know.
Well, and then to that end, Andrew, you have a 2 hour and 46-minute film that I honestly am not sure anything you could take out of it. And so I was just curious if you could talk to us about your editing process, how you went through it with this. What other versions did you potentially have? What did you wrestle with you had to keep and maybe get rid of?
Look, all movies are crap until they work. You know, they're just shit. and that's just the way it is.
I love that quote.
Yeah,
I mean, they are, you know, like, and you just hammer away at it, and, you know, you cross your fingers and you watch it and you hope it's going to work this time, and it doesn't. It's like time 30 and you still can't watch the fucking thing, and you're like throwing shit across the room. And then all of a sudden one day it works and you're just like, I'm a genius. But up until then, you don't know, and you don't know if it's ever going to. So, I mean, especially a movie like this, which is very much about, it's kind of, it's about my relationship, your relationship to her. You know, the film is not about her relationship to other people in the story. The film is about the viewer's relationship to her. Do you know what I mean? We understand why she's doing everything she's doing, but nobody else in the story does, you know. So you're kind of like the only person who understands, you know what I mean, when you watch the movie. That's the whole idea of it. Sure. And it's a kind of an emotional stepping stone, you know, like how do you keep the emotional momentum going? So it's a really tricky balancing act. And also the movie is working in ways that it's not easy to quantify or understand. You know, like I know that if I remove a scene here, it's going to have a big impact like 40 minutes later, right? No. but it's not storytelling. I mean, most movies are like, bag of money, you know what I mean? The clock is ticking. We got to get from A to B. Do you know what I'm saying? Like,
Sure.
There's something there's some sort of like joke superstructure that is sort of carrying you through the thing, and you don't actually need the scenes to be good. You just got to like Basil exposition your way to the end, kind of thing. Do you know what I'm saying?
Sure.
But something like this, it's a little more. It's difficult to balance it, and it takes a long time. I mean, the film is like. I mean, it's exactly the film that I wanted to make. It's not like there would be a director's cut of Blonde that would be any different to the one that you've seen. Do you know what I mean? You're not going to make it any better. I mean, you cut stuff because it's bad, or you cut stuff because you don't need it. And everything has to prove its place. I think I try to take out every single scene in a film at some point. To see what you can get away with getting rid of. But it was difficult. It didn't matter what we did to the movie, the length of it wouldn't change. I could pull out. Actually, it's a different kind of law, right? Like you can pull 15 things out of a movie, right? And it'll cut like 30 seconds. You put one thing back and it adds 3 minutes. It's just the way it is,
Yeah.
But the length of the movie never changed. And I tried sort of fairly radical ways of trying to cut the thing down. But, it's just better the way it is,
I think it's phenomenal.
Andrew, I wanted to highlight real fast Nick and Warren's score because the music is incredible. But in terms like the score almost plays as a character itself. So I wanted to know like
it's an emotional world, it's emotional. It's trying to create a sort of, an internal emotional landscape for her, that's it's all male voices though. So what's the question?
Well, the question really comes down to like how the score, in terms of if a score kind of plays off as a character almost in the world, how you juxtapose kind of what the score was going to do versus what Ana was going to do in terms of giving us the emotional aspect of the film.
Well, but what happened was, Nick and Warren do the score, and we have a particular way of working where they just generate music for me, based on, I'll give them a kind of color palette of instrument, like let's have the achy synth that Where It Was plays, icy piano, some sort of rumbly low end, you want some sort of disturbing low end, and vocals. That was basically the palette, if you like. And they're going to add strings to that too, and what kind of feeling it should have, right? And Warren had to look at something like, I don't know if you guys know about Pix, but basically dailies now go up on this website called Pix, and people get access to it, and they can watch this or that or the other thing, And we had to put something up on Pix for Warren in I can't remember what it was, but they never took him down. And he was in Paris at the time, and he watched all the dailies for the movie. So the 10 weeks or the 9 weeks that we were shooting, Warren would watch the dailies every day. I had no idea that he was doing this. So he started he knew the film really well, and he just started making little bits of music and texting them to me. And what they end up doing is they just generate an enormous amount of music. And it's sort of, some of it's sort of like free-flowing improvisation, some of it's a little more structured. It's just whatever sort of gets sparked, and they do about 2 weeks work on it, they'll just go into the studio every day for 2 weeks, and then I've got 6 hours worth of pieces, and then I cut to that temp stuff, and I'll just try different bits of music all over the place, and certain things just seem to hit, when you got the right sound with something, all of a sudden it feels like, oh, okay, that's what it is,
Right.
And then they'll have another crack at sort of, making it sound a bit better and a bit more sort of professional. And generally we don't use any of that. We end up just using the rough temp mix that they supplied me with in the first place. Occasionally we augment it with a few strings and stuff like that. But it's very difficult once you've actually got something that works to make it better. You're usually just making it worse, So we have a good relationship, where it's very organic. It's like we're cutting to the music as much as, we cut the music as well, but it's all happening at once. It's not like you cut a movie and then somebody comes in and puts some wallpaper music in it. You know what I mean? Like the music is sort of integral to the whole thing.
Absolutely. Yeah. Andrew, we really wish we had more time. We know you have a lot of other things to go to today, but thank you so much for coming on ReelBlend. We really appreciated the opportunity to talk about Blonde with you.
No worries, mate. You should have asked me some hard questions.
Next time.
Next time, yeah.
Did they say you're not allowed to ask me any hard questions? Really?
No, this is all the stuff we were interested in asking you when we want to talk about the filmmaking.
That's good.
Yeah.
God bless you.
Thank you so much to Andrew Dominik for joining the show. And of course, thanks to Netflix for getting him on to discuss Blonde. This is one you guys have to put on your radar. It's a fascinating movie. Can't wait to talk about it in greater detail on Friday's show. In addition, we do have another really cool interview that's going to be part of the main show on Friday. We got to sit down with director Nicholas Stoller and producer Judd Apatow to discuss the new comedy Bros. And we're going to review that movie on Friday's show as well. We also have some other really fun and interesting interviews in the hopper that I know you guys are going to want to be part of. So make sure that you subscribe to ReelBlend. Keep it locked in here for the latest entertainment and content from the show. And we'll be back with a full show for you guys on Friday. So until then, keep it right here.